The hardest shift from ACC mentor coaching to PCC mentor coaching is not the markers, it is the threshold. At ACC, you have a number, 7-point scale, 4-point math, an algorithm that produces a recommendation. The math holds the call. At PCC, there is no number. The standard is depth and consistency. The call is qualitative. The defensibility lives in your reasoning, not in the score. This video is about how to make that call without retreating to a number and how to write it down so it holds in a competency review conversation. The structural difference, ACC, 7-point scale per behavioral statement, plus 4-point scoring math. The numerical work is real. Average the C2 sample, count the others, apply thresholds, arrive at a recommendation. The system is built so two assessors who do not know each other can land in the same place. Reliability is the point. PCC, depth and consistency. No scale per marker, no average, no threshold formula. The system is built so an experienced assessor can render a defensible qualitative call, because the question itself does not collapse into a number without losing the thing being assessed. The judgment lives at the session level, not at the per marker level. You count markers, which ones present, which ones absent. Then you ask, across these markers, did this coach demonstrate the competencies with enough depth and consistency that I can call PCC? That is the work. One sentence holds the standard. The coach exhibits the marker observably with sufficient depth and consistency when the session calls for it. Read it carefully. 3 things have to be true. Observably, you can point to the moment. Timestamp, paraphrase, marker number. If you cannot point, it did not happen on the record. With sufficient depth and consistency, the marker landed, and it landed across the arc of the session. Not once, not skimmed, across. When the session called for it, the marker showed up at the moment a PCC level coach would use it. A marker present in a section where the session did not need it is not the same as a marker present where the session did. All 3. That is what demonstrated means. Anything less is shape correct without depth, and shape correct without depth is what ACC level coaching looks like. 3 questions you ask yourself for every marker call you make at PCC. 1, is the marker observably present? Can you point to the moment in the recording or the transcript and say, here, this is the marker? If you cannot point, the marker is not present. 2, did it show up when the session called for it? A coach who paraphrases beautifully in the warm-up, but never paraphrases when the client says something hard, has demonstrated the shape of 6.7, not the marker as PCC defines it. The marker has to be where the work is. 3, was the depth sufficient that a colleague would also call it? This is the consistency check on your own listening. If you imagine handing your call to another experienced PCC assessor, would they agree? If you find yourself stretching the language to make the call work, the marker is thin. 3 yeses. That is when the marker counts. The single most common mistake at PCC is counting. A coach who paraphrases 5 times shape correct but thin has not demonstrated 6.7. A coach who paraphrases once with weight in a moment that mattered has. 1 marker with weight beats 5 marker shapes skimmed. Hold that. Frequency without depth does not pass. The marker has to land for the client. Land means the client receives it, registers it, does something with it, confirms, corrects, deepens, redirects. The behavior arrived where the work was. Depth without consistency does not pass either. A coach who hits 7.5 once with extraordinary precision and then never demonstrates the marker family again across 40 more minutes has shown a flash, not a competency. What you are looking for is depth, repeated across the arc, not a checklist of behaviors counted, not a single brilliant moment. The marker family present with depth across the session. Consistency is the second word in the threshold, and it does almost as much work as the first. A marker shown once with weight may not be enough. PCC asks for the behavior across the arc. What across the arc means concretely. The session has phases: opening, contracting, the body, the close. A marker carried across phases is consistency. A marker that lights up only in one phase and goes dark in the others is a flash. Most calls in PCC mentor coaching hinge on consistency, not on a single moment. The candidate who thinks they failed because of one weak exchange usually did not. The candidate who thinks they passed because of one brilliant moment usually did not either. When you write feedback, name the consistency. Across all three phases of this session, you demonstrated 5.5, silence the client used to deepen. That sentence is what consistency language sounds like. It is also what makes your call defensible to the candidate. Defensible has a specific meaning. It does not mean correct. It does not mean another assessor will agree. It means you can articulate the call. 3 pieces: which marker, specific number, specific marker text, not the coach was present. 5.5 allows for silence, pause, or reflection, where in the session, timestamp or phase, 2009, mid-session, after the client named the harder version of the issue. The locator is what makes the call replayable for the candidate, what made the depth sufficient. One sentence on why this moment lands as PCC level demonstration of this marker, not as ACC level shape. The client used the silence. The paraphrase named what the client did not say. The question opened a layer the client was avoiding. 3 pieces. If you can deliver all 3, the call holds. If you cannot deliver all 3, write the rationale anyway. The gap will tell you the marker is thinner than you thought. Real cases, the marker is borderline, you cannot decide. Procedure: write the rationale before you call. Open your competency review form. Write the timestamp. Write the marker number. Write what made you consider it, and write what makes you hesitate. If the rationale you can write is thin, the marker is thin. The act of writing tells you. A marker that lands at PCC depth produces a clear sentence. A marker that almost lands produces hedge words. Sort of, kind of, maybe. Hedge words are diagnostic. When you genuinely cannot decide, note the marker and name the gap. Marker 7.5 considered at 12:43. Observation offered without attachment, but invitation to client exploration was implicit rather than explicit. Calling thin. That sentence is what an honest borderline call sounds like. The competency review form is the place this conversation lives. The candidate sees what you considered, where you landed, and why. That is teaching. That is what the threshold work makes possible. What changes about your job as a mentor coach when the threshold is qualitative? You hand mentees a description, not a number. Your demonstration of 7.5 is shape correct, but thin is a sentence the candidate can use. You scored a 4 on statement 14 is a sentence that sits in a spreadsheet. You teach the depth, not the shape. ACC mentor coaching is largely about hitting the behaviors. PCC mentor coaching is about making the behaviors land. The candidate already knows what the marker looks like. Your job is to coach what makes it land. You name what would have made the marker land. At 1432, you offered the observation. The marker calls for an invitation into the observation. Listen back. Here is what your offering sounded like, and here is what the inviting move would have added. That is qualitative coaching of a coach. Next, we go inside the markers themselves. Unit 8.1b opens C3, C4, and C5 marker by marker. Definition, listening test, the cuts that decide.